So we see countries formerly part of the Soviet bloc now starting to open up and be reformed this time as capitalist and democracies. And the first country to completely reform was Hungary. And in May 1989, Hungary opens its borders, creating a hole in the Iron Curtain. So where do you suppose most East Germans decide to take their holidays that year? Down in Hungary. Packed out the little cars, the Germans travel down to Hungary. From Hungary they cross through to Austria, and then finally from Austria we cross through to West Germany. The people were sitting in East Berlin and East Germany saying, well, why not us? Why should we have to cross through to West Germany? Why can we not have reforms here as well and eventually hope to open the borders of East Germany? So people start meeting to discuss these politics, discuss these reforms. And these meetings center in the city of Leipzig, a couple of hours south of here. But at that time behind Berlin, Leipzig, the second biggest city in East Germany. And they meet in churches, one church in particular by the name of the Nikolaikirche. And the reason they meet in churches is because churches were virtually the only place throughout the whole country where groups of 6 or more people could really gather without arousing any suspicion from the Stasi, the secret police. But eventually these meetings just get so big they spill out onto the streets. They then become regular Monday night demonstrations. And the leader of East Germany at this time is a man by the name of Erich Honecker. And Erich Honecker is really a very straight down the line party man. He famously announced back in the summer of 1989, I believe the Berlin Wall will still be standing in 50 to 100 years' time. It's just 99.5 years out on that one, so obviously not a bad guess. What he does is he hears about these protests, these demonstrations in Leipzig, and thinks he needs something to stop people talking about politics and reforms altogether. So almost as a form of distraction to the public of East Germany, he decides he's going to throw a huge celebration to celebrate the 40th anniversary of East Germany in October 1989. To this celebration, he invites, as the guest speaker, Mikhail Gorbachev. Just forgetting here, Gorbachev's policies are almost completely opposed and very, very different to Erich Honecker's. So sure enough, the celebration comes along in October. Thousands of East Germans are either listening in person or listening out across the radios and televisions. Erich Honecker stands up, he gives a fairly boring speech, sits back down, but then Gorbachev stands up and gives a very famous, very inspirational speech in which he says, those who are unaware of the changes that will take place in history will be crushed by those very changes. The people of East Germany listen to this, and this is what they're waiting for someone to say. So people start chanting Gorbachev's name. Some people even start chanting Gorby, Gorby, Gorby. They love him. He's more popular than the Hoff, if you can believe it. The people of East Germany, along with Erich Honecker and the government of East Germany, they know the next Monday night demonstration in Leipzig is now going to be big. Because people now know reform and change actually realistically out there on the horizon. So Erich Honecker sends a very clear message to the people of Leipzig across the radios. Because he says, stay out of the city centre. Do not leave your homes tonight. We have sent extra blood supplies to all of the local hospitals. I remember the last time in any major uprising in East Germany, 17th of June 1953. On that day, around 250 people have been killed under the direct orders of the government. So the people of Leipzig, the people of East Germany, they know the risks. They know if they go out onto the streets that Monday night, they might never return to their homes again. Yet that Monday night, 70,000 people take the streets of Leipzig. 70,000 people then kiss goodbye to their husbands, or their wives and their children. They go out to protest. And Erich Honecker now knows this situation is just too big for the police to try and control any longer. So he does call in the army, he does call in the tanks. This time not Soviet tanks, but instead the tanks of the East German army. The East German army tanks roll in and they then hear the people chanting. You hear them chanting, Wir sind das Volk. Wir sind das Volk. Wir sind das Volk. We are the people, we are the people, we are the people. And the army really then faced with a decision. Do they go with Erich Honecker and really follow their orders, or do they go against their orders and go then with the people of East Germany? And they decide to go with the people. Because not a shot is fired. No one is injured. Some of these soldiers, they even actually join in with the demonstration, but I'm no expert. You can't be a very good communist dictator if you don't have the backing of your own army. And the following Monday this time, not 70,000 but 120,000 people in the streets of Leipzig chanting this and that's called We Are the People. What they were trying to say when they were saying this was the Stasi, the East German secret police, they are not the people. Erich Honecker, he is not the people, and the government of East Germany, they are not the people. We are those people, we want that change, we want that reform. So So several days after this, the 18th of October 1989, Erich Honecker then resigns on health grounds. More or less pushed out of leadership. But the new man was brought in to replace him as a man with the name of E105DEB03. But this change of leadership really makes no difference. Because the following Monday this time, around 320,000 people in the streets of Leipzig, and at Alexanderplatz, the 4th of November 1989, just up the road from here, around 600,000 East Germans gathered there. And this protest becomes so big, ends up reaching all the way down into the Linden and right to the Brandenburg Gate at the bottom. So this is where the East German government are almost completely out of options and completely out of ideas. So they hold a meeting to decide exactly what their next step will be. In this meeting they decide on three things. Firstly, they're going to hold an international press conference 2 days after this meeting to announce some of the results of it to the international media. Secondly, a bit of a party reshuffle, kicking some old members out, bringing some new members in. And lastly, they decide that to a certain extent they're going to tell the people of East Germany what they want to hear. They'll tell them that they're gradually going to start introducing visas for people to leave East Germany. But this is going to be a very long, very drawn-out process. It's going to take people weeks, if not months, to get all the paperwork, the requirement, the application together to actually get this visa. So they're trying to keep people happy until they come up with a long-term solution. In the meantime, a very long, drawn-out process to actually get this visa. So 2 days pass. Comes the international press conference. The press secretary for East Germany at this time, a man with the name of Günther Schabowski. And Günther Schabowski had not actually attended that meeting. Officially, he was actually away on holiday. But he now turns up at the international press conference having very little idea what is going on, what is taking place. So then the secretary runs up to him. And she says, Mr. Schabowski, here are the notes from the meeting which you missed a couple of days ago. Initially, Schabowski tries to hand these back to her, not really interested, but she says, no, you really have to take these and you really have to read them. So Schabowski reluctantly takes the notes from her, does not listen to her though, does not read them, puts them in his pocket, thinks no more about it, walks on into the international press conference. And this could be here the most boring press conference the world has ever seen. They're reading off a list of names of party officials no longer in the party, blah, 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 blah. Journalists are falling asleep. Some journalists even get up and leave, which in hindsight really the biggest mistake of their entire career, because then an Italian journalist who's dressed in a blue suit puts up his hand and says, Mr. Schabowski, what exactly are you planning to do about these protests being taking place down in Leipzig? Schabowski here is stunned. Knows he has to answer this journalist's question, but really has no idea what to say in response. So his mind is racing, he's thinking, and suddenly he thinks, those notes. Must be something about this situation, the notes from the meeting a couple of days ago. So he pulls out the notes at the front of the international press conference, and then from there starts frantically flicking through them. And eventually gets to a page, you can see he's concentrating on it, he's reading it for a couple of minutes. What he does, picks up the microphone and announces, it appears, ladies and gentlemen of the International Press Corps, that all travel restrictions between the country of East Germany and the neighbouring country of West Germany will be lifted. Now everyone is shocked. No one expected this to happen, no one really knows quite what they should do next. So the Italian journalist puts up his hand again, he says, Mr. Schabowski, does this include the restrictions between East and West Berlin, the Berlin Wall? Now Schabowski at this point really started to panic. Sweat dripping down the side of his face, his hair is getting plastered in the side of his head, people decided they're going to have to leave, like Schabowski, you're on your own with this one. He is frantically now flicking through the notes at the front of this press conference, desperately trying to find an answer to this journalist's question. But of course, there is no answer within these notes. So eventually what he has to do, picks the microphone again and announces, I don't know. I suppose so. Yes. Now remember, the Berlin Wall is a symbol of a divided Berlin, a symbol of a divided Germany, a symbol of the Cold War. In the last 5 minutes, this man has more or less announced it is now completely obsolete. As an American journalist, a man named Tom Brokaw puts up his hand and says, Mr. Schabowski, when will these changes take place? When are these restrictions going to be lifted? Now at this point, it's 6:55 p.m. Press conference is due to end at 7 o'clock. Schabowski now has 5 minutes to get himself out of this mess. He can say end of press conference. He can say in the foreseeable future, when all correct conditions here have been met, like politicians speak. He can say next year, next month, a week on Tuesday, anything to do better than what he said. What he then does, picks up the microphone again and announces, as far as I know, effective immediately. The journalists at this point going absolutely mental, running out the room because this is really the biggest story of their entire career. Meanwhile, this is being broadcast live across East German television. East Germans are watching this, they see it, they hear it, they phone up their friends, say, did you hear what happened? So the 5,000 East Germans, 5,000 people, turn upon the checkpoints in north of Berlin, Strasse, now demanding to be let through from East Berlin to West Berlin. Now, this is all very well, but there's only one major problem. That is that no one has told the border guards. Two of them on duty that night, expecting nothing much, quiet night, but a target practice at 5,000 people turn up demanding to be let through to West Berlin. So they try and get hold of Günther Schabowski to find out what exactly has happened, what's taking place, but they can't. So they try to get through to anyone they can, anyone at all. And eventually they get through to the Stasi, the East German secret police. If you remember, it's 1989, so mobile phones are about out here at this point. They say, Stasi, Stasi, are you listening? We are always listening. Help us, 5,000 people are turning up at the checkpoints and managed to be let through to West Berlin. We do not know what we should do next. Okay, the standard Stasi procedure in this case would be to open fire on the crowds, the rest of the people get scared and they run away. Okay, I don't think it's going to work in this situation. There are two of us on duty. I've got 2 rifles, I've got 2 bullets, and Freddie, what's he got? Fred's got 3 bullets. That's 5 bullets, 5,000 people. I do not see that working out. Okay, hold on, then we can then consult the Stasi handbook. Then in that case, tell anyone who has all their official documentation with them at the checkpoint, they come through. Correct passport, correct visa, they can come through the checkpoint. Nobody organised enough to have that with them, so don't worry. So guys like, okay, phew Stasi, thank you, put down the phone. Then I asked the crowd at the gate, okay, anyone here with all their official documentation, correct passport, correct visa, you can come through. Not really expecting anyone at all to turn up. 2 little old ladies turn up waving their passports in the air because they are West German citizens. They've just been over on a visit to East Berlin. So the guards take the passports through them, they check through them, stamp them, and everything really appears to be in order. So of course then they announce to the crowd at the gate, okay, we'll open the gate and we're going to let these 2 nice old ladies through. The rest of you, please just stay back there and don't move anywhere. So they open the gate, the 2 little ladies hobble through, and then 4,919 people pile in after them. So shortly after 8 PM, the 9th of November 1989, the Berlin Wall has fallen. And all through that night, checkpoints start opening throughout the whole city. So shortly after 2 AM, 10th November 1989, every single checkpoint in Berlin has now opened. And this is really a hugely emotional reunion for some people, because the whole family is completely separate and completely cut off by this wall. Grandparents never seen their grandchildren. Cousins never met each other. Even a case of back in 1961 when the wall was first put up, a mother who was separated and cut off from a 1-year-old son in a hospital in West Berlin at the time. So most of those people are reunited. West Berlin as well is kind of the place to be that Thursday night. There's a lot of celebrating, a lot of partying, a lot of drinking. Mullets are flying everywhere, the Hoffs on top of the wall claiming all the glory. It's madness. And this party goes on all Thursday, goes on all Friday, all Saturday, all Sunday. Until a Monday morning, Berlin wakes up with the biggest hangover in the world. They wake up going, oh, where am I? But when they sober up, when they realize they're in West Berlin, the majority of East Germans who crossed over for this celebration, East Berliners, they went back home. They went back to East Germany. Because that's where their lives were. With their friends and families, all for them back in East Germany. It wasn't really for a lot of people within East Germany they ever wanted to be West Germans or live in West Germany. They just wanted a lot of the same freedoms that people had in West Germany. Because the biggest hangover of all that Monday morning was for the government of East Germany. Because checkpoints had opened. Images of people flooding through these checkpoints, climbing the wall, being broadcast throughout the world. So they turned to their new leader, they turned to Egon Krenz to decide what to do next. And he says in response, let the people here decide. So Germany holds the first free elections in 1933, and the people of Germany, the majority, decide to reunite. So on the 3rd of October 1990, Germany is reunified. Since then, there's been over 20 years of growth, of change, of reconstruction, and produced a quite incredible city you see before you today. And this is pretty much the end of the tour for me today. Just want to thank you guys. You've been a pleasure taking around the city. You've stuck with me through all the Putin nonsense at the beginning of the tour and all the security there, and through the snow, through the cold. So thank you very much for today. Thank you.